There was nothing but bad in that house. I was going to burn it to the ground. That's the truth. I was going to burn it to the ground. I just pray to God it don't happen to nobody else. That's why I told you. Anybody buys that house and got kids and move in there, come on, man. You really gotta be, something wrong with you.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Frank, the True Crime All the Time podcast. My name is Franklin James, the serial author, and this was supposed to be my lovely camp counselor, Frankie, but she did not dress up for our post-Halloween special. So shame on you.
Yeah, my apologies.
Frankie fuck up.
Frankie fuck up.
I'm just being frank.
Was sick though, so a little bit of sympathy.
So
here.
I'll give her some leeway.
So this will be our post-Halloween
special.
Special.
If you want to call it.
You know what? They're all special.
Well, I love Halloween, so I don't give a fuck. Like I'll still call it Halloween on Christmas Day because
because I was supposed to be also a camp counselor.
You were. Well, I was supposed to be Jason.
You're like the lead one.
Yeah, I was Jason.
Right.
And you were supposed to supply the mask. Like you had a lot of you had a lot of responsibility
for
this Halloween special, but it's fine.
It's okay.
It's fine.
Because you know what? We're gonna have a Christmas one.
Maybe it'll happen before Christmas too.
Okay.
Maybe. No promises. You might get it January, February, who knows? But just know you will get it.
It's a busy month.
I mean, it is pretty busy.
You know?
It is pretty busy.
We have you turning 50.
Yes, I will be turning 50.
57. 56?
8.
58.
8.
Sure. Okay,
yeah,
good.
It's been a ride.
It has.
It's been a ride. I look good, right?
Close.
For 50? Yeah. Yeah. Today's special. A massacre that literally sparked an entire franchise.
Absolutely.
Books and movies and people, they profited off this.
I think it was probably one of the most profitable murders.
Yeah, I would say so.
Maybe second to Dahmer, right? Because he did pretty well.
He did, his name did, yeah. No, the people who worked on this definitely profited a lot and probably still profiting for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the Amityville Horror. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try to unpack it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that people don't know.
Yeah.
That I was surprised to find out. Maybe a little disappointed at times because I'm a big horror movie fan and I love all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I still have, I don't want to say hope, right?
Hope's fine.
Ironically, that Amityville home, they had that sign outside of their house that said high hopes. That's what the family called it.
They did.
They had high hopes and it did not pan out.
We got
nearly in that direction. So, yeah.
All right. So, like you said before, not a lot of people know about the Amityville Horror. I mean, at least what they've seen from movies.
Right.
And, I mean, they may have read the book, right? But as far as like the actual, at least what took place. Right. So what I'm going to do is kind of break down the history of the home itself, and then we'll just dive into what happened on November 13th.
Yeah, let's do
1974.
Let's be frank about this.
All right, we are going to be frank about the Amityville Horror. All right, so the property itself, right, used to be owned by the Irelands. So they were very powerful and influential family back in the 20s around that time. So they were rich, obviously. Mm-hmm. They may have been sacrificing virgins, slitting the throat of goats. I mean,
probably. I mean,
could have added to maybe on the property too. I don't know. It could have been some things going on. So they owned it in the 20s. They sold it to the Moynahans. I want to say in 24. Mm-hmm. And then the Moynahans are the ones who had the house built on the property. They removed the small cottage that used to reside there, and they removed it. The Moynahans.
This is a big Irish.
Yes.
Settled,
right? Well,
the Italian. Well, you got to know
later,
New York, though.
That's
the
true.
Irish and the Italians.
Yes,
that was a
very prominent.
big thing. Yeah. And they did not get along.
So the Moynahans purchased or acquired the property. 24 had the house built in 25. 3-story. Is it 5 or 6 bath? I think I read 5, but I heard 6 bed. I'm sorry. Is it 6 bed or 5?
I think it was a 5-bedroom home.
That's what I thought. 5 bed, 4 bath is what I remember with the 2 circle quarter windows.
It was large. It was a large home.
Oh yeah, that Dutch Colonial was massive. So the Moynahans had it up until the 60s. So they had it for a while. And actually their daughter was the one who ended up selling it to another family, the Rileys. So they had it from 60 to 65. And so they didn't have it very long. From what I read, there was like some infidelity stuff going on. So yeah.
These Irish.
So,
I'm kidding. Shouldn't have said that.
I'm
Irish, Italian, and a whole bunch of other
so you're
stuff.
You're
so
Irish
okay.
though, so it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know how that is.
Well, obviously, I can't be racist at all. Clearly,
Duh.
Don't
need to point that out. Jesus.
Yeah. So the Rileys had it 60s. They ended up selling it in 1965 to the DeFeos, the Big Ronnie. I call him Big Ronnie, Luis, and yeah, you can take it from there and let us know about the DeFeos.
So the DeFeo family was very infamous and actually very well known. So I think, from my understanding, it started with Louise, and her family was allegedly I don't want to jump to conclusions here, but there was some involvement, possibly with the mob or the Genevieve family, of crime, which was, the mafia was very involved back then,
right?
During the 50s, 60s,
yeah.
In, various schemes, racketeering, money laundering, things of that nature.
You name it.
So in any event, Louise's father, who was the father-in-law of Mr. DeFeo, Ron Sr., he owned a Buick car dealership. He was very successful. And he was not really thrilled about Louise.
He was not. No, he wasn't. And
Ronnie's relationship. But ultimately, I think he accepted it. And gave his son a job at the dealership. And Ronnie DeFeo was a pretty successful car salesman. But at the same time, I think that Louise's father did not think that he was doing well enough, and ultimately purchased this Amityville home, fair and square, from whatever family had it last,
the Rileys,
but purchased it all, outright. So there was no mortgage,
right?
Which I think led to some of the tension later on that happened within the family with Ron Sr.
Right.
Because at the time, especially there was a big Italian family, and in that culture, and I can speak somewhat from a familial, experience, but culturally, the father is the breadwinner and the father is the provider, and that is what makes the father and the husband feel respected, right? Like that he's providing for his family.
Man of the house.
He's the man of the house. He's the king, right? Like this is his palace.
I mean, it's a nuclear family era too. It's the 50s.
And so there's all these different things involved. So there was a lot of resentment, I think, that he had this home, which looked like everything that he wanted to be perceived as, a breadwinner, successful. But he knew it wasn't his, and that his father-in-law kind of held it over his head. So with that being said, in 1951, Mr. DeFeo, Ronald Sr. and Louise had Ronald.
They did.
DeFeo Jr.
Ronnie
Jr. They went on to actually have 4 more children, 2 other boys and 2 girls.
Yeah. They were busy.
They were very busy, and it's alleged from there's a lot here, so please interject.
I will. Yeah, no, go for it.
They were devout Catholics.
Yes.
Like I said, so Ron Jr., who they called Butch, So we can call him Butch just to differentiate between father and son.
I'm just gonna call him Ronnie June.
Or Ronnie June. Either or. We'll alternate.
Yeah, we probably will.
He had a comfortable childhood. Like I said, he came from a family.
Butch the Butcher.
But, well, yeah.
Sorry.
Seriously. Stop it.
Sorry.
Butch the Shooter.
Yeah.
But yeah, they came, so devout Catholics.
Right.
And from the outside, it seemed based on family, friends, neighbors, that it was a good family,
ideal.
Happy family, the ideal family, doing what they should be doing. But Butch was described as being very emotionally troubled. He was kind of the outcast of the family.
Right.
Whereas their father was also described to be sort of hot-tempered.
Yeah, very hostile, very aggressive.
And what would be considered abusive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it weren't Louise that he was taking his anger out on, it was typically Ronnie Jr.
I mean, there were accounts where I believe it was Luis's brother where he, said that he, witnessed Big Ronnie throwing Butch the Butcher just across the room, being very physically and verbally abusive to him. So I can see that very, very well having an effect on little Ronnie at that point in time.
And I think that both were hot-tempered, and they once Ronnie got to be a little bit older, they were they butt heads.
Yeah, I feel like, so from what I did gather, it kind of feels as though Big Ronnie had certain expectations for his son, and his son, I don't think he was reaching them, so to speak. I don't think in Big Ronnie's eyes he saw his son at his full potential,
no,
I guess.
But whatever. I also get the sense, and we'll get into that, that he blamed himself for that. And he probably was partly responsible given some of the research that I did. And just to give some context to this for the siblings, with Butch or Ronnie Jr. being the oldest.
Right.
There was then Dawn DeFeo, who was 18.
Right.
And these are their ages at the time of the death.
Yeah.
Allison, who was 13. Mark, who was 12. And John Matthew, who was 9.
Right.
So, yeah, he was emotionally troubled, bullied, I guess, for his size and weight. He was a big kid.
Yeah,
but
he was bullied.
Ron Jr., I guess, was a really big guy.
Yeah, no, he was too.
Very just powerful, appearing even too, like his voice, his mannerisms, and physically his size. And it sounded as if Ronnie also struggled with a hot temper. He actually ended up being expelled from school for having these angry outbursts. So eventually his family got concerned and they brought him to see a psychiatrist, at which time he was like, I don't need this. And the parents said, okay, he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. Everything's fine.
So it was kind of around that time that the parents decided that they were going to incentivize his anger essentially by giving him money, employing him at the dealership.
Right.
He'd get a stipend, weekly, regardless of the work he did. Right. Which was oftentimes nothing. He usually just ran errands, I think, and things like that. And so this incentivizing this bad behavior did not help him. He would spend the money on drugs, alcohol.
That's how he coped with the, what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And ended up being, I think by 17, he was using heroin, LSD, and then later on crystal meth. Yeah.
Which definitely had an effect on his psyche for sure.
Yeah. So what are your perspectives that you found out about his upbringing?
So excuse me. I know in a lot of cases, parents tend to project their unmet needs for validation and achievement on their children, seeking fulfillment through their success, right? When they don't have that ideal childhood or what they feel is the ideal childhood, they want that for their child. And if their child's not doing that, they might take it out on them. in
like
some
sort of
form
living through their child,
right,
so to speak. Yeah.
right. I think that, yeah, for sure, Big Ronnie was abusive, emotionally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Ronnie June's mom, very passive and not really, she, may have been there, but maybe she just wasn't. I don't think he was getting the emotional support that he needed at that point in time. And I think that led to him fostering feelings of like resentment
Mm-hmm.
and anger and rage. And that's why he turned to the alcohol and had that, affecting his temperament, right? And I mean, I've read there were instances where, he would lash out his family physically. He put a gun on his
He pulled a
father.
gun, yeah, and thankfully, it's my understanding the gun malfunctioned, like it
Yes.
wouldn't shoot.
Right. So he's clearly like he's in mental crisis for
Yeah,
sure.
he's a time bomb,
Yes.
a ticking time bomb.
And I think all those things, the lack of emotional support, the substance abuse, the unaddressed childhood trauma, not going to therapy, the exposure to abuse. I think all these things just kind of twisted his mind and it bent him to the point where he snapped.
Yeah. And it sounded as if he got kind of paranoid too.
Yeah.
After a while. Some of the things that his friends and stuff reported that he said, he actually pulled a gun on one of his good friends while they were hunting. And then sort of later on that evening, that same day, acted as if it never even happened.
Which is it's interesting because later on he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah.
So.
Well, also interesting too is that somebody had described the father's behavior, which the way that he acted would now be described as very manic.
Right.
That he would go from being very passive, calm, loving, and then just flip a switch, and you just never knew what to expect. Those
hot-headed Italians, man.
Exactly.
I mean, my name's Frank, though, so I think I can kind of say that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably what, 80, 90% Italian, if not 100.
I'm wearing the green and red, so.
There you go. Yeah. Stop your assumptions. So there could have definitely, I think, been some maybe not just generational, but genetic issues. We don't know, but certainly inherited his dad's temper.
So, yeah, I think nature and nurture for sure were involved here. So here's the thing about growing up in an environment like that, right? So I've been doing a lot of research on, just on a biological level. And I feel like his prolonged exposure to the abuse, that his father, the tumultuous and dysfunctional environment he was growing up in,
mm-hmm.
I think it had a neurobiological effect on him as well, right? I think that, so there's two things, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, those are two things that, I've done research on because there's been studies that link those two parts of the brain to psychopathy.
Mm-hmm.
And overactive amygdala. So these things regulate your emotions,
right.
Fear, anxiety, rage, things like that. And then your prefrontal cortex, there's a decrease in the activity in that. That's your planning, your decision making, regulating your emotions.
Right. Impulsivity.
And yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like going through these things at a young age can start to rewire
mm-hmm. Absolutely
some of those things going on in your brain.
It's an interesting combination of nature combined with nurture almost, because nature because you are in that development stage, right? And nature because you're not being given the proper tools and upbringing to develop appropriately.
Right. Well, that's the thing too. A lot of children end up suppressing their emotions at a young age. And so they never, when they grow up, they don't know how to cope and deal with certain things because they never, like you said, they don't have those tools and they've never learned those tools. And
mm-hmm.
a lot of that, in a sense, they often never learn to empathize as well because they're so closed off and shut down, and that ability to do that.
That is a learned behavior.
Yes.
And I think that some people think it's just something that comes naturally because it feels like it does.
Yeah, right. But there's more to it.
There is much more to it. And there's a difference between also having a conscience,
right,
being empathetic, and the ability to actually have like the emotional intelligence to practice empathy. Right. And that's kind of, I think, what differentiates like the psychopaths and the antisocial personalities from even being capable of learning empathy, because there have been studies where EEGs on the brain of patients who have been diagnosed with antisocial or psychopathic personality disorders, it's different.
Yeah.
They can show them images or videos of, say, an animal being harmed, right? And a normal person, it changes your brain waves, right? You feel that, and it saddens you. Whereas somebody who has that sort of disorder, nothing activates. It doesn't light up.
It's a regular fucking Monday.
Right. And again, and that's not to say that they should just be like pitied, because they shouldn't.
Well, no,
they still know right from wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But it is very interesting how it can affect their upbringing, I guess.
Correct.
For sure.
Yeah, like I would never. It's like, you not feeling well and you're not getting the Halloween special out. I can just be like, oh yeah, that sucks. And just, or I'd be like, oh no, I get it. Like I understand, because. I've been there, I've experienced these things. I can totally understand where you're coming from, as opposed to just being like, do better. Right. Which is what he said. I mean, if I'm being frank, she does need to do better.
She does. She talks in third person. I do apologize, though, for my illness.
No. So are you on the same wavelength as far as like the upbringing and Ronnie June?
And I will give you at the end of this my complete opinion, I guess, as to what I think kind of contributed to this, or I guess the opinion I could come to based on what we know.
No, yeah.
Because there's a lot of information on this that I was completely shocked by.
Right.
So let's fast forward to what started here, right? So we're going to go November of 1974.
November 13th.
November 13th, to be specific.
The morning of, was it 4 a.m., something like that?
Yes.
I read.
And actually, because this could have contributed, it's an interesting little take of something that happened in October, the month before. It was just a few weeks. I think it was the end of October of 74. Ronnie Jr. was sent to deposit from the dealership $20,000 in the bank.
Okay.
And him and a buddy had planned this mock robbery so they could take, because $20,000 back, that's a lot now. But it was a lot.
That was way more than, yeah.
They would plan this mock robbery, and then they would split the money.
Okay.
So it didn't quite work out the way that he thought. And when police later questioned him, instead of cooperating, he again showed his rage and he exploded on the police. He refused to cooperate, which kind of led his father, DeFeo Sr., to suspect his son and then question him. And again, it was at that time that he threatened to kill his father if he turned against him. So I just thought that was kind of like an interesting...
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, incident that happened within a fairly short period of time before the murders. So, November 13th, what happened, Frank?
Ronnie June plays a game called Let's Play Murder the Family.
Woo! Who goes first?
So, yeah, a lot of speculation on just the events of that night. I'm not too familiar with the order. Were the parents the one to go first?
Yes.
I mean, obviously you'd want to, right? Because they're the ones that, especially dad, because you want to take the bigger person, the one that may give you the most trouble.
Well, and there's some theories as to why, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can jump in. So clearly mom, dad, siblings, but so that's why I'd say there's some things going on here, because it was assumed that His sister helped him.
Dawn.
Dawn with this whole, there were a couple other people involved. You know, he didn't want his siblings to die. Don killed them. He killed Don in retaliation.
He flipped shit on her. Yeah.
Like there's a lot. There's, you know, a couple of guns were involved. There was evidence that did prove that there were a couple of guns involved in the murder and not just his.
Not just the shotgun, right?
Yeah. So, and then, you know, there was forensic evidence as well pointing to, because he was like, oh, Don, but then Don was kind of ruled out because the forensic guy said that the gunpowder or the residue left over was more from an exact, like being close to a muzzle as opposed to firing a gun itself. Because if she would have fired the gun, there would have been that gun residue right. on her, you know, near her wrists and things like that. But there weren't. It was more on, you know, her, you know, whatever she slept in. So a lot of theories on, but they were all found, what, face down?
Face down, arms up.
Arms up. No, apparently
as
no
if they've
one.
Been placed there.
Yes.
But I don't think, at least back then, the DNA evidence wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
They weren't able to kind of do that.
Right.
But it's interesting that they were all found in the same exact position.
Yeah. Like things like that. It's, I don't know. It's like, I like question whether or not they were already unresponsive. You know, I don't know. For no one to move. I don't know. I guess you could just be in fright. It'd be in a state of fright where you just don't move at all. Like you hear gunshots going off and you just stay in your room and you stay in your bed because you're just so afraid, right? And then, you know.
Well, especially for the younger kids.
Right.
I think that would have made sense. But according to forensics, they estimated the total amount of time that the murders took place was within a 15-minute period.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think in the midst of a murder,
in the midst of a situation,
feel like a lifetime.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
Especially if you're a kid. But what's also weird is that nobody heard these shots go off.
Yeah. Like none of no one heard a shotgun go off.
And those are loud. It's not like he had like a small handgun with a silencer or something on it.
No.
This was a shotgun. Like what was it? It was a not a 12 gauge, right? Was it a 12 gauge? A 35 Marlin.
There you go. Somebody's hearing that. Someone is hearing that go off.
It's very surprising to me that nobody did.
It's a little suspicious.
And that there was no signs of a struggle.
That's another thing. Like everyone was just compliant. I mean, I guess guns do that, right? They can make you compliant.
Which could be why their arms were up.
Like lay in bed, put your arms up, don't fucking move.
Right.
I mean, that's
possible.
So it's possible.
And I guess that's the theory that police came to.
Yeah.
Following their investigation. So,
I mean, he said once he started, he just couldn't.
He said he couldn't stop.
Like some fucking Pringles, right?
Yeah, right. You can't have just one.
Once you pop,
can't eat just one.
Once you
Pringles
pop,
they're good.
You just don't. Yeah, no, they are good.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So,
not murder though.
They think that the murder occurred sometime in the early morning hours of November 13th, maybe between 2 and 4 a.m. ish.
Something around that time frame, yeah.
Ronnie then proceeds to take a shower and get ready for work.
He does.
And goes to work, right? I guess the excuse for going to work so early was that he couldn't sleep, so he just decided that he'd go in, get some stuff done, even though from other accounts, he didn't really work much at all while he was there.
No.
Goes to work. But before that, he does bring the evidence, right? The gun.
He does. Does he bring it to work or does he?
No. He drops it on the way into a nearby canal or drain.
Because he later shows the police where he put it. Yeah.
So he dumps the evidence, goes to work, ends up leaving early. And then I believe it was sometime that evening that he goes to his local bar.
Right.
And what's he say?
Oh, he's like, oh, my family. You guys want to see? Didn't he say something like, you guys want to see what happened or something like that?
It was something like, my family, my mom and dad have been killed, or somebody shot my family, somebody killed my family.
Like, how do you even bring that up? How do you segue that?
He like rushed in, like he had just found them. Like, oh my God, because this was a bar that he frequented.
Right.
And so a couple of the other patrons there that he knew were kind of like,
right.
What did you just say?
What?
So they follow him back to his house.
Yeah.
And they find exactly what he said. They find the family dead. I think at that time, they only found the mom, dad, and I want to say the brothers. Because it was initially reported as being 4 murders, 4 bodies.
Yeah, 4 bodies, yeah.
And it wasn't until the police came and started their investigations and with the detectives that they found that there were 2 more.
Yes.
So 6 total.
7-person family reduced to 1.
Right. Which made him the obvious suspect.
Well, yeah.
And things kind of got weird after that.
Yeah. Like, in what direction do you mean when you talk about weird? In what direction are you talking about? So
he changed his story.
Right. His court proceedings and things like that.
He did eventually. It was within, I think, less than 24 hours of the murder happening that he confessed.
Yeah.
But then he did start to change his story.
He changed his story a lot.
But there was a couple of things that happened while the police were at the home. They ended up removing Ronnie Jr. to, I think, a neighbor's house. So he wasn't so distracted and they could question him there. Mm-hmm. And while the police were kind of doing their thing, the phone rang. And it was one of these, I think Massey was his name. It was one of the guys who was alleged to have been involved in the mob and also have been an accomplice. And they said that it sounded as if Massey was not expecting the police to answer the phone. And so it was almost as if he was trying to like give a heads up or, maybe ask if the job was complete, right? Something to that effect.
Something to that nature.
There was also some connection with the police department and the DeFeo family, which I encourage people to look it up because it is very interesting. And one of the officers, I think, came by and yelled at the detectives that were interviewing Ron Jr. and said, "Stop, he's family." And they thought he meant like, "Are you related?" But he referred to them family like he's like their maid family.
Maid family, right.
Right. Which had been a rumor that had been going around for a long time, even prior to these murders. So there was a couple of things that, had happened. So eventually Junior did confess.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you were saying that he brought in his sister.
Do you think, what do you feel like his motives were in regards to why? Because there was some like speculation as far as financial gain or
I don't think that's what it was.
Like, what do you feel like?
I think it was years of built up anger and resentment. And there was an allegation. Apparently Ronnie was married at the time. And that was never really made public.
Ronnie Jr.?
Yes.
Yeah, so I read that too, and he wasn't. Like
Gwendolyn?
Yeah, so the dates that he was married kind of, it's like post this situation or whatever occurred. I did read that because I was like, oh, he was married, but
he got married to somebody while he was in prison too.
Yeah.
So there was some speculation that there was a hit potentially put out on him prior to the family being murdered.
Right.
And that he was trying to protect his family or he was trying to protect himself essentially. And that his intent was to strictly go kill his father. The mother woke up, started screaming for her husband.
Yeah. Which
upset Ronnie Jr. very much. Like, why are you defending him? And this is what he states happened during one of his prison interviews.
Right.
And so he then proceeded to shoot her and,
couldn't stop.
He couldn't stop. But I do think it was just a lifetime of resentment, anger, perhaps jealousy. I mean,
because you think the siblings got a lot more attention.
I think he felt that way. And there was some indication that he felt that way. Yeah. That he was spoiled. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
I mean, the kid was his dad bought him a speedboat.
Yeah. They were on the lake.
They rewarded him for his bad behaviors, thinking, that it would somehow
this'll fix it.
Right. Yeah. But also dad reportedly did it every time he would abuse
him too. Yeah.
It was kind of like, here, sorry.
But here's
take this gift. Yeah. Right. I think something triggered him to snap. And I think that's really ultimately what it came down to. I don't think other family members were involved, and I don't think it was a mob hit.
I don't think so.
I think
either.
It's just interesting how
excuse me,
involved all of that was.
No, yeah. His court proceedings, like I said, he blamed it on his sister, and then he take that back as well and said she wasn't involved. Right. They did want him to plead and the insanity. They did want him to plead that he was insane, but and just say, I heard voices. The voices told me to murder my family. Which is where, yeah. I know he was very adamant on not wanting to do that because he did not want to come off as insane.
Right. And he tried to appeal his case for that too.
He did. Yeah.
And like I said, I listened to some of the interview that he had while in prison, and the interview took place, I want to say in 2004. I think he died in 2021.
Maybe 19, but it might have been 20.
It was something, yeah.
It was recent.
So he did this interview, and he did kind of sound like one of those, like your uncle that kind of likes to tell tall stories where there's like some truth to it, but it might be like a little bit exaggerated. Yeah. But he definitely didn't seem crazy.
I don't think he was.
In comparison to some other, I think he was just pissed.
Yeah, rage.
Combined with the guys doing years of LSD, drinking. Oh, yeah. He's doing a ton of cocaine. He was involved with, some friends that were drug dealers. Crystal meth.
I mean, that shit reshapes your mind too.
Right. Like, especially, he admitted to the amount that he was doing. He said this was like these drugs were pure. And there were things that
they were around then.
Yeah, he admitted.
Can't get that now.
Right. I'm sorry. I know that's hard for you.
Well, I can't depend on her. So that's how I know.
Well, maybe we need things to be able to get out of here.
I drink and I know things.
He fully admitted that there were times that he wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't. And one of those times was when he said that his sister Dawn was involved and said that he went in there, fired a shot at his father. Dawn was next to him, and then he heard another shot go off, and he was like, why is there an echo in here? But then he says, I don't even know if that was real because we gassed up beforehand. Like they got lit,
right.
They got high, they were drinking, whatever beforehand. If in fact she was, a part of it. I think that the amount of attention that this got, the type of community, Amityville is a wealthy community.
It is.
This is a wealthy neighborhood. And I think that somebody would have figured that out if she were involved. Unless there was a whole conspiracy with the mob and a corrupt police department.
We'll never know.
Who knows? And don't come for me. I'm not going there.
I mean, yeah, we're definitely not saying that whatsoever.
No.
Just speculating on,
I commend the Suffolk County Police Department.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. They did a great job.
All right. So eventually, I guess ultimately, he's convicted for the murders and sentenced to life in prison. I thought it was also interesting that his grandfather, the mom's father, was like, hey, I can't support you anymore through this trial. Like, I can't. He cut off the money for, for his lawyers, essentially. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well, how grandfather was just like, you know what, nope, can't do it. I'm done.
Yeah, there was definitely some other, I think, family dynamics that probably contributed to this.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that Butch, Ronnie DeFeo Jr. Was a product as a nurture situation.
Yeah.
With a history or just maybe a proclivity to having a hot temper and, flying off the handle.
Perhaps that was passed down from dad.
Right.
But ultimately, his environment molded him.
Yeah. maybe being the eldest child, feeling like he had
Those
most of the
expectations,
responsibility,
right.
the expectations.
Not meeting them.
Right. And I think maybe his dad probably projected that somewhat because he didn't feel like he was providing for his family either.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what happens.
And so he felt shame for the way that his kids were turning out, especially his oldest child.
And Ronnie Jr. took the brunt of it.
Yeah.
Which led to that horrific morning. And they all died.
So how did the haunting begin?
Oh, gosh. Right. So, 1974, I mean, I'm sure this made national news, right? The Lutz family bought the home 1975, a year later. They bought the home for $80K, actually, which was far less than what the DeFeos, or Luis's father, paid for. I think he paid maybe close to $500,000 for the home, maybe a quarter. I know it was up there. I know it was well into the six-figure range.
It was a large home. It was in this wealthy community. Yeah.
They got the discount though. They got that murder family discount. No friends and family.
Stop it. This was a horrific tragedy.
I know. This is how I process.
I have to remind you sometimes.
This is how I process my trauma. Because I have a lot. So yeah,
Sorry,
the Lutz
I meant
family.
to apologize.
Why? We don't have to apologize.
As a woman, we're going back, but continue.
The Lutz family, they acquired the home 1975. While they're in the home, I think the Lutz, so from what I gathered, they were in some financial struggles, is what I gathered from
what were they doing purchasing a home?
Oh, no, they just didn't purchase any home, did they? They happened to purchase a home where, this massacre took place a year prior. So but they're not in the home very long either. 28 days, right?
A mere 28 days, yeah.
28 days. During that time, I do recall reading that George Lutz, the husband there, he said that when he started feeling uneasy and irritable and on edge, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, because you're fucking broke and you just bought an $80,000 home. Like this. I'm like, nothing's possessing you, sir. You're just going through some fucking hardships.
Yeah, like you screwed up. You can't afford this house.
This sounds like some personal problems.
What are you doing?
You need to address. So yeah. He's experiencing these things. He even said that he saw some pig-like face behind his daughter in a window with red eyes, and he rushed in there, and it was gone.
It was gone.
Oozing, green ooze from the walls, levitating beds. Apparently there's a room that it was like red room.
Poltergeist activity. Yeah, red room.
There was a red room that only 2 people could sit in. It was very intimate. I'm very curious about this red room.
What really took place in that red room?
This red room that was very small. Only 2 people could fit in.
And Louise maybe.
Do you think so? See, I'm thinking maybe that's how they punish some kids. They just put them down.
They may have done that too.
In this small red room. Furniture being moved, I think, as well. What else?
Priest.
The priest came in to try to bless the home, to purify the home. Apparently, he heard voices in the second floor tell him to get the fuck out. Not in those exact words, but
no, he just left out.
Just telling him to leave
in a very demonic voice, allegedly.
I don't want to get controversial on the whole priest thing. I don't know. In any event, they brought in Ed and Lorraine Warren too, right?
Yes.
To try to come in, and was this before they became as?
I think so.
Got on the map.
Because I know The Conjuring, that home really kind of stuck it out. But I think that the Amityville haunting was before that too. I think it was one of their first big cases,
right? Am I missing anything else of what was going on?
I don't think so.
That they pointed toward. Like you said, there was a lot of poltergeist things
Yeah, just all the activity. I mean, the things that we.
I mean, he even said he saw his wife on the bed that just levitated in the air.
Right, in like the Exorcist type situation.
Yeah.
The things that we saw in the movie were things that were alleged to have happened, that it was built on an old Indian burial ground.
So he claims.
Right, because he found, what was it, like some kind of a statue or something, wasn't it?
So apparently, there was this satanic worshiper named John Ketchum back in the 1600s who apparently escaped Salem and made his way to that property where, in the Chinook, I believe, burial ground, the Indian burial ground there.
Which turns out has zero history in that area.
Zero, absolutely,
They just chose...
They did.
There, just to sort of spread things out a little bit, I guess.
So the Lutz, they just couldn't take it.
They could
not take it. They were frightened. They were scared.
Yeah.
They had to get the fuck out.
28 days later.
28
Interesting.
days.
That was a good movie too, wasn't it?
Actually, that was a good film.
Very good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I'm going to have to do it.
It's probably not far from actually happening in reality, so we'll probably have to do a podcast on that one too.
I mean, I will be down for that. I
if we're alive. I don't know.
That's true. I might be the first.
Yeah, that rage virus is coming.
Oh, man. I'm going to enjoy it, though.
Yeah, I have a feeling you will. Unfortunately. I need to go. I need to hide.
You know I'm coming for it first.
Yeah.
People who get sick.
It's been fun.
Oh man. So DeFeo's got to get out of there. And the home's back on the market. So do you want to get into like how they started working with, the investigator and
because I feel like it is interesting, but it also kind of steers away from the primary focus of the actual murders that happened.
Right. No, go ahead then.
I think anyway.
No, yeah.
So one thing that did kind of stand out to me that I think is worth looking into is that the Rick Osuna, who did write that book on the
author
was it the night the DeFeos died, was it? Yeah, the night the DeFeos died.
Something to that effect.
He and some other investigative journalists had concurred that there was a lot of information within the court records that actually did support credible evidence that supported Dawn being involved.
Yeah.
One that really stood out were the crime scene photos. They said that he specifically quote strongly suggested that more than one person was involved in the killings, and that's not the first time. I mean, whether it was her or not, that somebody was potentially involved. So who knows? I think it's going to forever be a mystery.
I mean, she may have very well been involved. I mean, I think I read something where, she wanted to do something or have a boyfriend or have someone or go see someone, and Dad just kind of put the kibosh on that. Like, he just was not. He was very controlling in a sense. So I can see how, if she's also experiencing that form of abuse and his controlling nature, how she would be like, no, I don't, because a lot of times when kids commit parricide, when they kill their parents, a lot of the time it is for independence. They want to be free from a situation. And, that may have very well been the case for her. She wanted to have a different outcome, a different situation, be more independent, and I mean, who knows? She could have had a hand in, hey, let's do it on this night and get your friends or whomever that we'll
make it a botched robbery or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt that Dad was probably very controlling, and I think that it was Ronnie Jr. who said that growing up at that time, devout Catholics, Italian family, they like to keep their kids home, basically forever, right?
It's a very close family.
Very, very close-knit family. You you don't grow up, get
you don't
married, and
stray
move out.
too far.
You know,
yeah.
like you stay home, you bring your spouse with you, the grandkids live there.
Yeah, it's like,
and you just kind of
my son lives down the road with his wife.
Right, you're very close.
Grandma lives across the street.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think dad was probably controlling in that sense, and having, you know, his oldest daughter wanting to go date and kind of be on her own and seek some more independence.
Yeah.
He was not having
He was
that.
not having it. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but at least in my opinion, I
Right.
think that he is a product of us upbringing.
Yeah, for sure.
For
sure.
And any antisocial personality disorder that he had, I don't think that he was born with.
No.
I think he
no,
developed it.
Yes.
He may have been somewhat predisposed. I mean, maybe, who knows? I think that maybe.
It could have been lying dormant, just like very dormant.
This triggered it, right.
It just, his environment just lit that match. And,
right. But comparing him to like Richard Chase.
Oh, well, yeah, this different level.
Or Ham and Eggs.
Good old
Al
Good old
Fish.
Al Fish.
You know, I think that those two were probably born to kill.
Yeah.
Or at least be predisposed to kill. I mean,
for sure.
You know.
For sure.
It would be a very delicate balance. Like it wouldn't have taken much, and it didn't for either of these two.
No.
Those two anyway, to do what they did.
To go on their path. Yeah. Didn't the DeFeos even meet with Ronnie in jail? I mean, not the DeFeos.
Lutz.
The Lutz. Didn't they meet with...
George did, I guess.
George, right? Interesting.
What was that about? Do you know? I don't know much about that, but I did hear that may have been part of that whole conspiracy to raise some money. It was going to help with the appeal for Junior's case.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know too much either.
Some cash for the Lutzes. And,
you know, that spirit's possessing him. He's on edge, you know.
But, you know, like I said, there is a part of me, possibly just being a horror fan, and I grew up, I really loved the movie. I read the book.
No, I did too, yeah.
And to me, it was believable. I did not know any of this really until researching it for this case. You start taking a deep
dive, and then you're like,
yeah.
Oh.
And in fact, I think I thought it was the dad that killed them all too. I didn't realize it was their son.
Yeah, the Lutzes. So I also read something where, you know, when they kind of fell out with their attorney, he kind of came out and said, and again, you know, it could be bitterness or resentment. I mean, who knows? But he did say something to the extent where they came up with this whole story. They all were together and came up with the story over wine, and they were just shooting the shit. I'm like, oh, maybe if we do, you know, one of those type deals. I mean, I don't know.
It's definitely plausible. Maybe even more likely that that's really what happened. But there's also the possibility that maybe that was a story that they came up with to keep people from turning that neighborhood into a circus.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, take it in the other direction.
That's very true. That's very true. I mean, I guess we'll never know, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I guess we'll never know.
Which it's part of the intrigue. I kind of like it like that, though.
No, yeah, I guess I do too. I don't know. I mean, there could be some residual energy left from that massacre in the home, right? Just making it unsettling, just being unable to move on because something horrific happened. So there's things left over, and you know,
I believe that.
Yeah, I mean. You walk into,
I was going to say,
you walk into a place and it's cold and you're like, oof, like.
Yeah, or it feels heavy and sort of stuffy. And
I can understand that.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
I can get that. So.
Just kind of leaves a bad vibe, really. I mean.
It does. I mean, yeah.
Put it in the most like simplistic way.
It does. Happen. I mean, this house will forever live in infamy now. I mean, they had to change. I do want to just drive past it one day. I know they just completely.
I thought about that too. Yeah,
we should do a road trip.
We should.
I know they completely changed. They took the quarter circles out. Like it's just completely different now, with different address now. But I mean, you can slap lipstick on.
Looked creepy, right? I mean, it was known for having those.
That's what I loved about the house.
The overhang and the windows. Yeah, and the thing was making a face. Like it sort of gave off this presence of like it was unsettling to look at.
Which further made the whole thing more marketable.
Yeah.
in my opinion. But I mean, I love that I understand when they're changing. You don't want a lot of people going there. So I get that.
Right.
But
Especially it's an affluent neighborhood and people
yes,
are just like, look,
we just want to move
we gotta do,
past
because you said they
this.
changed the house number.
They changed the house number from 112 to 108. I mean, it's public knowledge now. But yeah, they just kind of want to move on from,
Yeah.
that massacre, that horrific morning. So, which I
Yeah.
understand.
But I mean, bottom line, there was 6 people, an entire family that were murdered for no apparent reason
Senseless.
by their own family member.
The family
In a very
annihilator.
gruesome
Yeah.
manner.
Yeah. Insane.
And there we have Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr.
And we have the Amityville Horror.
Yeah. Sorry for anybody that was disappointed like I was when I saw that, because
Yeah, I still have I'm still skeptical.
It's interesting, and I really do. I highly recommend, if this is a case that is interesting to you, or you're interested in like the movies, the book, to really look into the DeFeo family history. There's a lot there.
There is a lot there.
Let us know what you think, because it's interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe we could revisit it at some point.
I would love to revisit it.
Yeah.
At some point.
I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on it.
Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think. If you guys have any theories, or if you've heard something different than what we've said, we'd love to engage with you and talk about it, taco about it. I don't know why I said that.
Because you're a doozy.
This fucking story was a doozy.
It was a doozy. Share, and subscribe.
Yes, please. Like, share, and subscribe. And try not to get murdered.
Just don't cross us.